few months ago, I set out to create a neat little project of satin stitch only art pieces, a little collection, but it had to carry a single theme. And today I want to tell you how this collection came to be, because it actually took me 4 months to create. It was my first ever time doing such a project, which required not only a single theme, but also the biggest troublemaker of them all, a cohesive look. And this is exactly where I did not shine on a 100% scale. The idea struck me in June. Bear in mind, it's November, and it all started with this piece. What an iconic place. This is Moraine Lake. In fact, last year I purchased this print behind me. It is by Peter McKinnon. You can't really tell from here, but it is the exact same place. That one is just foggy. Anyway, the Moraine Lake was actually the inspiration for this whole collection. I knew that I wanted to create it, but I didn't really want to create just a single one. I wanted it to have friends, you know? So I went to the maps. And as it turns out, Canada is a goldmine for gorgeous landscapes. So I had zero problem finding the rest of the 5 lakes, which I ended up embroidering as well. They are Lake Louise, Peyto Lake, Maligne Lake, Abraham Lake, and Maligne Lake. Once I picked all of them, I jumped on my iPad and sketched the lakes on there. This was the easy part. The hard part was deciding on the color palette. See, I don't have an issue settling on a single color palette for a single piece of art. It's pretty straightforward, but in this case, I had to actually come up with a color palette for 6 different artworks, which would actually look cohesive and would work on its own as well as together. Was really hard. Also, on top of that, I needed this palette to be sort of dense in numbers. I didn't want for it to be 60 plus colors. I needed to be like a decent amount. My little project pickle was that I didn't plan for this project to take 4 months. I wanted to complete it in a good amount of time, but I've stumbled across problems. And something that I've learned throughout this experience about myself is that if given extra time, perfectionism kicks in. So after I'd finished the first 2 hoops, I was kind of stuck. I didn't know where this color thing was going, and it was a little bit discouraging because I was excited overall, but this color thing, the cohesiveness is so hard. I'm gathering that these artistic paint holes are pretty common and they're really hard to get out of. So I had to rethink my whole idea. I had to rethink the way that I would approach it. And I decided that I would actually just forget about the collection and focus on each embroidery hoop individually. The only rule that I had left at that point is that I would try really hard to limit my colors. I've already used a good amount of number of colors on these 2 hoops, and I was just gonna keep it at that and add extra colors if I really had to. And before I knew, I was totally fine again. I was enjoying it. Although the cohesiveness, as your artistic eye can probably see, is definitely not at 100%. And I've made my peace with it. The way that I learned to look at these kind of things is that it could be worse. I could have given up, and I didn't. So that's a little win, and I do have a collection at the end of the day, and it is my own, and it is something that I've not really seen done before. I'm excited for it. Also in here, I want to say something potentially controversial because I actually enjoyed this challenge. I enjoyed going through the trouble of not knowing what the hell I was doing and where the heck this whole collection was going. I feel a little bit accomplished. So here's a little rundown of the process that I used to create this from scratch. I didn't film a whole lot of it, mainly for social media, so I'm gonna show you some snippets and talk you through it. I started with 6 3-inch flexi hoops in this green color. I thought it would be very fitting. I don't usually use these. They're just for display for me. They don't hold the fabric tension very well, so I would not recommend using them for stitching, but they are pretty good for display. I've got a rubber bit on the outside that's flexible and the totally hard plastic on the inside, which is what I used the outer edge of to finalize the size of my embroidery. And then I stitched all of the pieces in slightly larger hoops. I used 4 inches Nerge hoops, which are my favorite, and they hold fabric tension fantastically well. To transfer my designs to the fabric, I use this friction pen. It is amazing. I always recommend friction pens. They're fantastic for transfers and they're heat erasable pens. Maybe another thing that you don't know about these pens, if you've actually heard of these, is that they're water soluble as well. I highly recommend you pick up one of those pens. What a piece of magic to own. The fabric that I used is premium calico cotton. It's quite thin, it's very dense. My favorite by far for a single cotton strand embroidery. And I'll leave some information about all of these supplies in the description as well. Other than that, that, it's your typical embroidery supplies, apart from two things which I want to shine some good light on, and it is needles. My favorite needles, milliner's needles, which are quite long and a little bit sharper than typical embroidery needles. I find them super helpful for a satin stitch especially. And the second thing is this mini USB light. It's actually a reading light, but I use it to grip to my hoop. Actually, it gives me more grip while I'm stitching, especially if it's a smaller hoop. And two, it gives me perfect lighting every single time. I don't know if you've ever worked with single strand. It is super difficult on your eyes, and it's tiny, super tiny stitches. Without this kind of point and shoot light that is not wired and it is right there on the hoop, you can't do it. Like I can't do embroidery without this light. That's how valuable it is for me. But yeah, these dudes are super cute. I am really happy with them. I'm happy how it turned out, happy how it went, kind of. And I already want to do something similar. In fact, throw your ideas at me in the comments for landscape themes. And bear in mind, I have picked up some more of these flexi hoops, but in red. Should I do the Wild West next? The Wild West. Oh my gosh, totally that. Yeah, great stuff. Love it.